Maybe you have heard many times that PTE is a different test, or PTE is easier than IELTS, or it's easier to get a score in PT, or everybody gets good a score in PT. But if you are one of those few students who could not get the score or who has been struggling with this test for quite some time, you might be wondering why everyone is saying this is an easier test. How can this test be easier with those many questions and those many tasks that we are supposed to do? That's what we are going to discuss in today's short video. So let's start. Now, many times people say that PT is easier than IELTS, or PT is a different test. PT scoring is much more lenient than the scoring of IELTS and so on. But how or in what ways it is easier than IELTS? That's what we will try to figure out. The first thing is PT is one of those few tests which looks at more than one skills by asking just one type of question. And that is why we call this an integrated test. So what does an integrated test mean? An integrated test means when you are performing one task, you are being assessed for more than one skills, regardless of where that task is asked. In other words, if you are doing speaking section, and let's say you are doing one of the question types of speaking, you can also be assessed for other skills involved while doing speaking. As an example, let's think about read aloud question in PT speaking. In this question, you read whatever is shown on the screen. But in order to do so, you have to read the content and understand, especially if you want to present it in a meaningful manner, in a natural manner, which means although the computer is recording your speech, you are also reading on the background to make sense of the text, to present it in a natural manner. And that is the reason why when they score you for read aloud, they give you a score for both reading as well as for speaking. And that's what we call an integrated test, where skills are integrated with each other. So if you listen and speak, that will be listening and speaking test. If you read and write, then the score from that particular question type will go to reading as well as writing. It sounds fair and it sounds better as well, because if you are doing more than one task, you should be rewarded for more than one skill. And that is one thing that makes this test different than the other test. In IELTS, for example, when you do reading, you get a score for reading only. When you do writing, you get a score for writing only, and so on. But in PT, when you do one question type, you get a score for more than one skill types. There are a few questions, especially, which contribute a score to more than one section. And these questions are in almost every section of your test. There are questions in speaking which can affect your score in reading and listening. Your writing can affect your reading. Your reading can affect your writing. Listening can affect both writing and reading. But speaking is the only question type which is not affected by anything. But if you think about writing, people often say that a good writer is a good listener and a good reader as well. And that is the reason why writing score is affected by both reading and listening. Reading can affect your writing because what you are going to write pretty much depends on what you have read, because often you need content to present. And that's why reading affects writing too. What we listen to can affect what we write or what we read. If we imagine a situation inside a classroom where we are listening to a professor, then in that case, what we understand from that lecture can determine how much we can write in our assignment, or at the same time, how much we understand while reading textbooks. That's why they have integrated listening with writing and reading. So that's how all these sections interact with each other. And if you want to get good score, it's important that you spend some time understanding this integration, thinking about how your performance in one section can have impact on the other section, and which question types are responsible for that, and what you should do to make sure that you get a score in both the sections and not just one of them. I'll give you one simple example here. Many people think that by speaking faster, they can increase their score in reading because speaking fast often increases the score in fluency. But what they ignore is if you speak fast, then you compromise your clarity, and because of that, you might be difficult to understand. And as a result, you might lose a score in reading or listening despite scoring high in speaking. So, PT is an integrated test. You are being evaluated for more than one skill at the same time, and you have more opportunities to show your skill in different questions. But at the same time, if you are not careful about how this happens, how this is done, you might actually be losing a score. The second thing is PT focuses more on presentation than on the content, whereas other tests like IELTS focus more on content. So let me talk about this for a moment now. So what I mean by saying that presentation is more important in PT rather than the content. If you think about the questions like speaking or writing, these are output-based tests. That means in these sections, you're supposed to show something that you can do, compared to other input-based sections like listening and reading. Listening and reading are more about how much you can grasp, whereas speaking and writing are more about how much you can show or how much you can present. And if you think about exams like IELTS, in these exams, your content is as important as your presentation. But in PT, especially in sections like speaking and writing, as long as you can present well, as long as your presentation method, your presentation style is appropriate, you're likely to get good score regardless of the quality of your content. Because if you look at the evaluation criteria, then you'll find that in most of the question types, you get more points for how you say things or write things as compared to what you say or write. Now, I'm not saying that you can say anything. I mean, your content can be garbage and still you get the score. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is sometimes, even if your content is not high quality, if your presentation is better, then in that case, you can compensate the poor quality content with better presentation. What it also means is, let's say you are in questions like describe image or retell lecture or essay writing, where you didn't understand the question or where your understanding of the question was limited. But let's say that you are one of those few people who can stretch even one sentence into one long story, one dramatic story, one impressive story, then you are likely to fare better in this exam. So in PT, focus more on how you do things rather than what you do. And don't get too distracted by the difficulty of the content or complexity of the topic, because language is not about intelligence. Although intelligent people can have good language skill, but even people with limited intelligence or people who are not so much brilliant can also speak well or write well. And that's why if you focus more on how you should do things rather than what you should do, you are likely to get better score in PT. The next thing that makes PT different than other exams, of course, is this is an algorithm-based assessment. It's a completely computer-evaluated test. Because of this, it has some strength and it has some weaknesses. We are not that much interested in learning about the strength, but if there is any weakness, we must learn about that, because sometimes we can exploit that weakness and use it in our favor. One of the weaknesses of this system is it cannot differentiate a bunch of words put together from a meaningful sentence. In fact, it mostly looks at the sentences based on keywords used in the sentence. Because of that, sometimes even if the grammar is not correct, or even if the ideas together are not making much sense, if the words or sentences separately are meaningful, then you can still get the score. Now let's make it a little bit easier to understand. Let's see what will be the practical value of this. What it means is, in some of the questions like describe image, retell lecture, if I understand words but I can't understand the sentence, or I cannot make out what the speaker is saying, then in that case still I can get good score, provided I can capture enough number of keywords and present them in a meaningful manner or in an impressive manner, in a systematic way. And that's why in questions like this, we often use templates, because templates make the presentation better. And regardless of the content, you can get the score. If you ask me how to get better score in PT, the types of advice that I will give you will be completely different, because I know that in order to score better in this test, I have to perform in a way that makes it easier for the algorithm to understand my work, or that impresses the algorithm. So what actually happens in the test is, whenever you are doing a question, whenever you are answering a question, your answer is compared against the saved answer. The saved answer actually has multiple versions that they have collected from thousands of users around the world. So these are non-native as well as native English speakers who have answered these questions in different ways. So what happens is, all these answers are first rated by humans, and the computer tries to learn from that evaluation. So as an example, let's say that someone wrote an essay and human raters gave them, let's say, 7 out of 9. And let's say second human rater gave it 7.5 out of 9. So what the computer does is, it tries to understand what kind of essays get 7 or 7.5 from the human raters. And then it does complex types of calculation to guess how much a score you should get based on what you have written. Sometimes it works, but many times it also fails to work, and then either rewards you unnecessarily or even punishes you unfairly sometimes. And that is one of the reasons why trying to be creative sometimes can be dangerous in this test. And it's better to follow the safe path that people have already tried, because at least we know that that is one method that works in the exam. So based on this, what you should never do in this test: first, if you have done IELTS before, if you're more familiar with IELTS, you may find that some question types in PT are similar to questions in IELTS. For example, in IELTS writing, in task 1 writing of IELTS academic, you have to write about graphs and images. Now you get a similar question in the speaking section of PT as well. But don't try to do the same thing that you do in IELTS in PT describe image. And the reason is very simple. First, these are completely different tests, so their scoring is also different. Second, in IELTS writing, you have 20 minutes to answer the question, but here you have only 40 seconds to answer. Third, IELTS task is more about your analytical skills, whereas in PT, the question itself says it's describe image, which means it's your ability to describe what you see. So you have to remember this. Second thing is, in other exams, ACEs usually are quite important, because ACEs have been traditionally used as a method to assess your analytical as well as your presentation skill. But in PT, AC does not carry as much weight as other questions do. And that's why spending too much time in AC writing to get high score in writing can be just a waste of time and talent. Rather, you should learn which questions carry more points in PT writing and spend more time on those questions. Another thing is, in other exams, I have rarely seen questions repeating. But in PT, interestingly and perhaps fortunately as well, more than 80% of the times you get the same question which have already been asked. So if you do not prepare the past questions, if you do not practice the past questions at all, then you'll have double loss. First, if you get the same question in the exam, you'll have to rely on your skill, and it may take more time for you to answer that question because you have to think and then you have to answer the question. On the other hand, people who have already done these questions will answer these questions quickly simply because they know the answer. Second is, practicing past questions also makes you familiar with the exam structure and the difficulty level. So in the exam, it will be easier for you to answer the question and you will feel more confident. So guys, these are some of the things you have to keep in mind, and if you need any help, you know that you can call us in the number given on the screen, or you can visit our website where you can enroll in our free course. If you like our videos, please do not forget to subscribe, and please share this with your friends as well so that they know about our free courses. Until my next video, have a good time, stay safe, and all the best for your exam.